France has clearly chosen a different course. "39-year-old Emmanuel Macron elected president with 2/3 of ballot cast over the far-right's Marine Le Pen. After Brexit, after Donald Trump's election, make way instead for a leader who prefers, well, as the Financial Times put it, globalism to nationalism. In the crowd, there were even cries of Vive l'Europe, long live Europe. Is it a turning point, not just for France? Well, not so fast. Macron doesn't move into the Élysée Palace until next Sunday, but already Paris has witnessed its first demonstration against the president-elect, courtesy of the Communist-aligned CGC trade union and the far-left movement of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. How much change do the French really want? What kind of change? And if his policies fail, could it still be the far-right's turn in 5 years? Big decisions now rest on the shoulders of the youngest president, the youngest head of state in France, in fact, since Napoleon Bonaparte, starting with his choice of prime minister and preparations for next month's legislative election. This president is also the first since General de Gaulle who's never held elected office before becoming president. The trouble will start with the naming of his prime minister and how it weighs on his bid to build a new party from scratch that can win a majority in legislative elections that are just 5 weeks away. Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking if it's change you can believe in this country. With us now, he campaigned for Barack Obama in 2012 and Emmanuel Macron in 2017. Lex Paulsen teaches at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here.
Also with us, Émeric Choprade, independent member of the European Parliament, formerly with the National Front. Did you vote on Sunday? Who'd you vote for?
No, I voted for Macron.
You voted for Macron?
Yes.
All right. You'll explain that to us in a bit.
Yes, I
okay.
have to.
Also with us, Georgia Kuzmanovic, spokesperson for the far left's Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's vying to build a a far left bloc.
Good evening. Left is enough.
Left bloc in Parliament, and you yourself running in legislative elections.
Yes.
Next month in the north.
In the north.
In the north. Public relations strategist Olivia Grégoire is with us. So much change. Kind of nice to get an eye on how the French see it and how much change, again, that they want.
I'll try to.
All right, the France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Now, he told the crowds gathered outside the Louvre that he wanted to bridge the divisions plaguing France. He also reminded them, well, that the whole world was watching.
L'Europe et le monde.
Europe and the world are waiting for us to defend the spirit of the Enlightenment, under threat in so many places. They're waiting for us to defend liberty, to protect the oppressed. They're waiting for us to bring a new hope, a new humanism to a safer world, a world whose liberty is being defended, a world of growth with more justice and environmental sustainability. They're waiting for us to finally be ourselves.
Lex Paulsen, I suppose your American friends seeing this election through the prism of people who've lived through the one in the United States.
Yeah, we've, in the last 8 years, seen two historic elections in my home country in 2008 and 2016. The great difference, of course, is that there's a partisan realignment happening in France that wasn't the case in the U.S. In fact, after Barack Obama's election, the Republicans decided very quickly that whatever the president proposed, they were going to oppose, and it made legislating extremely difficult. Here in France, you have 74% of the French voters who cast a vote for one of the two major parties in 2012. Now it was 24% in the first round, meaning that there's an enormous desire for new answers from the party system in France that Barack Obama did not have the opportunity in his presidency. So I think it's equally historic, maybe even more of an opportunity for Macron.
That means I get to ask you the question I wanted earlier. Why did you vote for Emmanuel Macron, somebody who used to be at the National Front?
Because I experienced
the reality of Front National. So when I was elected, I thought this party could change the situation in France, to reform France, to propose serious reform. It's absolutely not the case. This party and its leader are not able to transform the country. They deny globalization instead of trying to adapt France to globalization. And that's what we have to do. And the good news with Macron, even if I do not support Macron, I mean, I voted for him. There are some good things, in my opinion, but on the other hand, I regret a kind of angelism regarding identity crisis in France. I think it do not understand what's going on really about the problem of Islamization, radical Islam in France. But economically speaking, I support his view because I think he really wants to adapt France to globalization.
How do you feel when you hear people saying "Vive l'Europe" and when you hear the Beethoven's Hymn to Joy, which is the ode of the European Union?
I want reform for Europe. I do not want to destroy Europe as a project. I believe we need a strong Europe in a multipolar world. So that's not my project to destroy Europe, and that was not my project entering in the National Front. And there is, even in that party, you have a debate regarding Europe. Some people criticizing the situation about Euro, about what Le Pen decided to propose to exit from Euro.
All right, so the splintering is taking place not just within the main center-right and center-left blocks that Lex was talking about, and where right now there's a split over how to approach these legislative elections. It could benefit the Jean-Luc Mélenchon's movement. The initial polls, and of course it's early days, suggesting that you could be the opposition on the left soon. Your thoughts about Macron's win? Is it positive for France?
First, what is positive for France is that Madame Le Pen lost the election, because we cannot have a far-right president.
Did you vote for Macron?
No, I abstained.
You abstained?
Yeah, I abstained, because we were sure that he will have the 65%, as was it was sure that he will be elected, and everything is a bit built up. I remind you what happened on the first round of these elections. On the first round of this election, you have four parties that appeared. They are pretty much the same strength. They're all about 20% and 7 million voters. And of course, just now you have 66% of people who voted for Mr. Macron, but you have 26% of people who abstained, 9% of people who voted blank or void, which is a huge record since the 60s. Is the president that's the worst elected in this country.
But when you abstain, that means
you're... the most important thing is that most of the voters do not support his project. So now the real fight will be for the legislative elections, and it is really not sure that this president will have a majority to run, and I hope he will not have it.
Olivier Grégoire?
I'm in part, I do not agree with exactly what you say. You're right on the point that 60% of the French people did not see yesterday the candidate for whom they first vote on the first turn. But if you look at the last election and you look at the voices, Emmanuel Macron is far better elected than Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande. So there is kind of paradox over there. Yeah, because if you look at the voices, this is the reality. But what's interesting... What?
It had a far-right candidate, which was not the case of Mr. Sarkozy.
Yeah.
It's kind of different.
Should be the answer. But the other part...
I took my responsibility.
The other part of the paradox, sorry,
we are the one who fought
for
National. I'm not coming from National.
Yes, but that's
Olivier.
Exactly why.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Olivier Grégoire.
Sorry, you're going to fight just after. There's no problem. But I just want to finish. There's something which would be interesting to discuss together, is that he's very well elected. Okay, you get the National Front. Okay, you're right. But what's interesting is that even if he get a lot of voices, you're right, he only gathered 43% of the population of the voting people. That is to say that it's the president who has the less support, because he had 35% of people who didn't vote yesterday. So we had 43 in support and 35 who didn't say nothing. So I think it's far more complicated than the figures appears.
And plus the 43 that supported him are not supporting his project. That's very different.
That's not true. You get 33%. If you look at the last polls coming from the night, because it's sociological polls and you should have written it, you get on the 48% of people voting for Macron decided after the first turn. You're right, so it was a struggle against the National Front. But you get approximately 33%, it's the Opinionway and Harris Interactive polls, 33% were support to the program. So
Olivier, let's look at the numbers. Macron's win a landslide in terms of votes. The man who a year ago didn't even have a party, winning almost every single département in France, even winning Corsica and the Riviera, albeit by a nose. And here's where Marine Le Pen has a problem going forward. She garnered 7.6 million votes in the first round, finishing a close second, and she only won over 3 million more voters in the runoff. Now, those 3 million more voters can seem like too many to some.
It's a revolution.
It's a revolution. Is the glass half full or half empty when you look at that?
We get some good professors, so I will listen to you. But the fact is that we have never seen the National Front gathering new voices between the first turn and the first round and the second round. So this is historical, and we can say we don't see it. This is approximately 4 million voices more.
But we have to explain why. We have to explain the problem of Front National. It's based on the reality. The reality is a double crisis. You have a crisis of identity. People are afraid about radical Islam expanding in the French territory and in Europe. And you have a crisis of disindustrialization. That's the problem. That is the reality. If we do not take it in account, then Front National will expand. But I said I took my responsibility. That's very important. You can imagine I come from Front National and I had to vote for Emmanuel Macron. Why did I do that? Because I know the reality of this party now. The problem of anti-Semitism, the problem of totally inability to govern. They are not able to govern. So I took my responsibility. It was difficult for me. I did not choose to put a blank vote. But I have to say that Emmanuel Macron is really impressing regarding some good news, globalization. He says we have to adapt France to globalization. It's a complete renewal of speech in the political landscape. But at the same time, if we do not take in account the loser, what we can call the loser of globalization in France, and there are numerous people that are suffering from the absence of solution, then Front National will win the next run.
All right, let's pause. Marine Le Pen underwhelming in terms of what the opinion polls had predicted in the very final days of the campaign, but she did gain more votes. What our reporters also found was that many people who in the past would have voted for Le Pen as a protest vote, they actually wanted to see the National Front as a party of government this time around. Did you get the sense of that when you were out canvassing?
I did. I think that, as my colleague pointed out, I think that there's an enormous frustration about the quote-unquote losers of globalization. There's a sense that globalization is a fact of life, and yet that it's produced whole communities within France that have been left behind. And similarly in America, we saw Donald Trump exploit those fears and uncertainties to enormous electoral impact. But Marine Le Pen had to do more than just speak to the fears and maybe even the prejudices of a part of the French electorate. She had to offer ideas of how she would govern the country. Anyone who watched that debate for 2 hours on Wednesday night saw a prosecutor, but not a president. I mean, she had incredibly sharp lines of attack in linking Emmanuel Macron to Hollande or to Germany or to Islamic terrorism. But number one, her arguments did not bear up under the weight of scrutiny. And number two, she had no positive program. And I think anyone who was making their decision in the last few days, most of them were going to choose someone who could be a president, and that was Macron.
All right, we talked about at the outset about international reactions. Here's an important one that came out this Monday. Well, it was one from Angela Merkel, which sounds a bit like an endorsement. But the other reaction that we need to follow here is the one from Britain. It's sort of an argument for stealing the UK for Brexit negotiations. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, well, she's also on the campaign trail. She's got a June 8th snap general election coming up.
Now, yesterday, a new French president was elected. He was elected with a strong mandate, which he can take as a strong position in the negotiations. The UK, we need to ensure we've got an equally strong mandate and an equally strong negotiating position.
All right. What's your reaction, Olivier Grégoire, when you see Theresa May saying, well, Macron's win's an argument for voting for me?
She's very clever. She has proven this during the election. I think on a communication point of view, what is interesting is the huge difference between the reaction of Angela Merkel and the reaction of Theresa May. And I think that the coming months and weeks, because we know that Emmanuel Macron is going to turn around Europe in the coming weeks, I think it's going to be difficult for him. And I think that even if he's elected now in France, he will have to cope and to face the distrust of Europe. And Theresa May also. Nothing is written about Europe in the coming weeks. It won't be as easy as it looks.
Won't be as easy as it looks, George Kuzmanovic.
For whom?
For Macron when he goes and tours around Europe.
It won't. It won't be easy. I would say something you said, Mr. Choprade. We are, the France Insoumise and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the one who blocked Marine Le Pen. During 1 year, she was built up like she will be at 30%. And if you look at the election, we blocked her in every popular area of France. We did the work. So we don't have any lesson to receive. We don't want what was built up, which is the second round of this election. Everything was done not to have Jean-Luc Mélenchon against Macron. This would have been a far more different debate and a very difficult election for Mr. Macron, because we are ready, Mr. Mélenchon is ready, and he knows, for example, what it means to go out of if necessary, of Europe, euro. But she doesn't know. So it will be difficult once again because it will not have a majority. I mean, there is a class struggle in this country.
Won't have a majority, Lex Paulsen?
I think we're going to have a very, very strong field of candidates. Just this week, you'll be seeing more and more of the candidates chosen from En Marche. We've already announced 14 of them coming from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of professions. We had 15,000 people postuler and propose their candidacy.
Who's the most formidable opponent? Will it be the far left? Will it be the socialists? Will it be the conservatives? Will it be the far right?
I mean, this is a predominantly localized election process. So we're going to be fighting these elections district by district, circonscription by circonscription, and we're taking absolutely nothing for granted. I think the Mélenchon campaign proved that they were very strong on the ground. I'll tell you, I went to places like Nancy and Orléans and Chartres, and the only other campaign that I saw on the ground was of the France Insoumise. So I have a lot of respect, and I think that there's going to be points of convergence, of convergence in our ideas, but frankly, I think that our campaign has future-oriented solutions, and at least when it comes to the economy in Europe, we have the more progressive ideas, and I look forward to that debate on the ground, and I expect that there's going to be some very close elections.
All right, we're going to pick up on these points when we come back. We'll take a quick break. Stay with us. You're watching a special edition of the France 24 debate.